Now, it is the Grassroots, the 2A Grassroots Roundtable and Strategy Summit. That acronym is the 2A Grass. See what I did there? Huh? You like it? Now, my daughter's like, that sounds a little like marijuana, Mom. I don't know. I'm like, but you know what? I'm going to make it work because it works. So the 2A Grass, and this idea grew out of a conversation that Diana and I had with Alan Corwin, with Michael Infanson, with one of the gentlemen on the screen, Philip Van Cleve, and did I say Alan Corwin?
You did.
Alan Corwin. And we were trying to sort of pregame before going to Washington, D.C., and we wanted to just kind of wrap our minds around what would be the best use of our time, what's some messaging that we can walk into some of the legislators' offices with. And the DC Project, we are one of the younger organizations of these Second Amendment grassroots organizations. And for these giants of the industry, these giants who have gone before, that we stand on the shoulders of, his head's just getting too big. I can't. I'm sorry. I'm going to reel it in a minute. No, Alan. But seriously, for them to take the time to be on a Zoom call with us for well over an hour and just throw ideas at us and connect us with people that they know through all the years and all the work they've done, it was so edifying, and it was so humbling, and it helped us, I think, have one of the best trips we've ever had to DC. And I thought, man, if I can get more people in a conversation and in a room, all the more better. And then I thought, well, let's bring in the public too. Let's bring in people who have a vested interest in this, because we can't do what we do if y'all don't help us with what you do. So we're all in this together, and it's just a tremendous thing, and I'm so excited that this has come together the way that it has, and that we have the technology at our disposal to be able to help the people that couldn't physically get here still be a part of it. I do want to acknowledge the media that's here that's supporting us. So we are live streaming on the AZCDL YouTube and Facebook. I think we finally figured out how to live stream on the DC Project Facebook and YouTube. Hope. Oh. Okay. And Justin Moshkow with Jam Audio and Video, he is in the back room. He is the man behind the curtain, and he has been working his little tail off. His wife, Julie, who is so pregnant, like any minute now, like we could have a baby tonight, folks. And she's here helping out. That is amazing. And being a small business owner that is doing everything with family, I extra want to give them a big applause. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. We also have AZ Free News. I want to mention they're not physically here, but every time I or Michael Infanson or any of us send them an op-ed, it's conservative leaning, it's, pro 2A, they run our work, and that is so important. And so to support the media that supports us, I just want to give them a shout out. And anybody else here from media outlets? I mean, we do have actually the only syndicated female Pro 2A radio show, Eye on the Target Radio. Amanda Seppacool in the front. And her cohort right here, her brother, right? So thank you guys so much for what you do. It's everything.
Riding Shotgun with Charlie's here.
Oh, Riding Shotgun with Charlie's here in the back. Why are you in the back? You are not shy. Find yourself. Oh, it's by the booth.
That's a trough.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. Well, I want to open us up the proper way. We always open with a prayer followed by the pledge. And Jamie is our resident prayer giver. Jamie Kelly, she is on the DC Project AZ. And she's coming forward, and she's going to give us our prayer. And if Frank Carroll has not arrived, maybe you'll get to lead the pledge.
All right, you got it.
Okay.
And somebody needs to bring our flag. What we do that? Okay, good.
Heavenly Father, I just pray that you provide a hedge of protection over our law enforcement, first responders, and our military today. I pray that you open the eyes of our country and the direction that we are headed if we don't stand up and speak up. I pray for your protection over everyone that's traveling to be here, their safe travels back to their homes, and guide our words tonight that we might be a message for you in love and light. In your heavenly name, amen.
Amen.
Beautifully done. Thank you, Jamie. All right, do we have a flag?
Back to the
Yeah, please don't like it. Good.
I empower State Representative Kwong Wen. Is it coming forward, this said flag? Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we ready? Ladies and gentlemen, please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right. I'm going to introduce the panelists, but then I have a very special guest that I'm going to ask to share a very personal story with us. But just going quickly down the dais so that, you know, I've kind of referenced some of our guests already, and I just want to be sure that everybody's familiar with who we have. So Kwong Wen, he is a state representative for LD1 in the state of Arizona, and he's also the president of the Arizona State Rifle and Pistol Association, which is the state arm of the NRA. Welcome, Kwong Wen. Thank you. Holly Sullivan, she is the only female president of a Citizens Defense League in the nation. She is the president of the Connecticut Citizens Defense League. We have Chris Stone, who is the state director, is not long enough, but I didn't have enough characters to put your actual title. But he is with the Gun Owners of America, who are the no compromise national lobby that are fighting for our gun rights all across this nation and holding the feet to the fire of these legislators that are doing all the wrong things. Chris Stone. Diana Muller, my personal friend, she is one of my heroes. She is one of my mentors. She is the founder of the DC Project. And the reason that we are here tonight, she is a former law enforcement officer, 22 years served in Oklahoma, and a 3-gun champion. I don't even know how you do all that, but Diana Muller. Alan Corwin, the author of the books we handed out, rabble rouser. Like he is what do you call yourself? The omnibudsman.
I write as the uninvited ombudsman since 2006. Everybody knows what that is.
Yeah, everybody knows what an ombudsman. No, we do not. Could you explain it, please, Mr. Author?
Newspapers used to have and media used to have an ombudsman. That was the person who stood aside from the staff and watched to see if they were being honest, accurate, faithful, and they would speak the truth. They've all been fired. I'm a freelance.
Possibly killed. We don't know.
Only the ones who work for Hillary.
So, right. So Alan Corwin is also the, I called him the president of the JPFO, but he said he's really the consultant of Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. And that is such an important group that, to me, it's shocking that after World War II, after everything that the Jewish people endured, that every single Jewish person wouldn't be on the front lines defending every syllable of their civil rights, of their human rights. So to have a group like the JPFO is tremendous. Thank you for being here, Alan Corwin. Michael Gibbs is the president of the Arizona Citizens Defense League. I am the vice president of the Arizona Citizens Defense League, so I get to say we are the watchmen on the wall and the guard dogs in the state legislature every single session, making sure that we keep our state as free as we found it. I kind of like to say it that way. And Michael is only the second president of this organization, and I think that that's going to be an important part of our conversation tonight is, I don't know, this microphone doesn't like me, is moving into second generation, how important that is to know how to pass a baton to the second generation. But Michael Gibbs, president of the AZCDL.
Senator Carroll's.
All right, very good. And Michael and Fanson. Sorry, I was going to blow you guys' eardrums out. Michael is also, in addition to what you see on his placard there, he is our lobbyist for the AZCDL. So, like, he's the one that's actually in those offices, actually holding the feet to the fire of the elected officials and reminding them how that power structure really is formed, right? We, the people, are the bosses. And tonight he is representing his organization, the Arizona Firearms Industry Trade Association. He is in their government affairs. Michael and Fanson. On your screen, I've got their names above their heads incorrectly. So in the first corner there, wait, did we lose Philip? Oh, Philip's gone. Well, we'll introduce Philip back when he comes back on. But F. Paul Vallone is on our screen. Now, Paul is the president of Grassroots North Carolina, and he is just an absolute go-getter. He has written a book that I should have brought with me, Paul, called what's the name of it again?
Rules for Anti-Radicals, a practical handbook for defeating leftism. Matter of fact, my shameless self-promotion, you can look over my shoulder and you'll see the book.
It's awesome. Thank you for all that you're doing. Because what happens in one state impacts all other states. And to have a guard dog like you in North Carolina is amazing for the rest of us. And hopefully coming back to us. Oh, yes. So F. Paul Vallone. Thank you for making time. It's 3 hours later where he is, so it's going to get late for him tonight. And then Philip Van Cleve, well, hopefully he'll be able to make his way back to us. Philip is the president of the Virginia Citizens Defense League, and everybody refers to him as really the OG, right? So we probably wouldn't have a CCDL or an AZCDL if we didn't have a VCDL. And so I was actually heartbroken that he was not able to make it here with us tonight in person. So I'm hoping that the gremlins get out of the system. We had a couple of other guests that,
Good.
There's Philip Van Cleve. So Alan Gottlieb, founder of the Second Amendment Foundation, he wasn't able to make it because they have a big event this weekend. And I invite all of you to think about participating in that. It's all day Saturday and half the day Sunday. It's called the Gun Rights Policy Conference. The cool kids call it the GRPC. And it is free. They feed you lunch. And it is wall-to-wall amazing people like you see up here. Talking about what's going on in their area of expertise and their state, and it's just a tremendous opportunity. So check that out at saf.org. They are still selling tickets. And then Lara Smith, the spokesperson for the Liberal Gun Club. Yes, there is such a thing. The Liberal Gun Club. And thank God for them, because who can speak to the legislators, the Democratic legislators, the liberal legislators, more powerfully than people who ascribe to, that would be their voters. Like, they want to give me some time of day, but they know that I'm probably not going to vote for them. But when I would walk in, if I was Lara and I say, listen, I'm part of the liberal gun club, I value my Second Amendment rights, they're going to listen to her. She was having actually surgery. I mean, if you want a good excuse, a good get out of jail free card, get out of this event free card, yeah. So she was not able to make it and didn't feel like she could handle the Zoom tonight, but we appreciate all that she is doing. All right, very good. Now, I do want to take a minute. I want to focus in on just recognizing who is in this room and maybe who isn't in this room. I invited a lot of legislators, and some of them showed up. One of them's on the dais, and the other one right there. This is Senator Frank Carroll. He's here in Arizona. He is one of our...
Caucus member.
What's that?
Asian caucus member.
He's an Asian caucus member, our other Asian caucus member is reminding me. But Frank Carroll is a true friend to the Second Amendment. Here in Arizona, we call it Article 2, Section 26. It doesn't roll off the tongue quite as easily as the 2A, but a major friend to what we do. And I just couldn't appreciate you more, and thank you for being here. Someone please find that man a chair. All right, I want to take a second. I want to introduce a very special guest speaker, someone who is a living, breathing, thank God, living and breathing example of why we need constitutional carry, as we have here in Arizona. I'm going to let him tell his story that were it not for the freedoms that he found once he moved to Arizona from California, he might not be here with us today. I want to introduce Raul Mendez.
Thank you all so much for being here. And oh, yeah, definitely. Thank you. Honestly, first of all, I just want to, thank God. That's most importantly to me, for being here, for, just breathing. Because, last year, July 3rd of last year, my family, my pregnant wife and my kids and I were victims of a mass shooting. So neighbor we never met just came to the house and just, started opening fire at all of us. Unfortunately, I took a bullet to the head where it entered the right side of my ear, came out my left eye. Just when, all hope was lost, just something just picked me up. Some people call it autopilot, some people call it, something else, but I just feel like something holy just wasn't ready for me to go. So I'm thankful for that I was able to get up and pull out my own concealed carry and just, eliminate the threat with a bullet, with the gunshot wound. So coming from California, LA County, where, gun laws are a lot different than they are out here. I honestly believe, turnout would have been different. 2 friends died that night, but there would have been many more. With my family lined up next, and if I wasn't carrying, there would have been many more body bags. So I'm thankful for that, and I'm thankful for people that are actually fighting for our Second Amendment, fighting for our God-given right, to carry, to self-defense. So, Cheryl, I appreciate, thank you for inviting me. Thank you, everybody, for attending, because that is what makes a difference. We cannot fight this fight on our own. It takes every single person, every single one of you to stand up. Because I am that living proof that guns in, the hands of law-abiding citizens does save lives. So with, everybody, thank you. With everybody in the fight, speaking your voice, and it goes as simple as, a relative that's, against it, just kind of giving it your perspective in a calm way, showing them the proof, statistics, A lot of people have actually reached out that, hey, my relative, my mother-in-law, this person was against guns, but I showed them your video, and now they purchased their first firearm, and now they're training. We don't hear much about, the media doesn't want us to hear about, good guy with the gun. all they want to show is just, mass murder. This person died, this person got shot. But there's so many stories out there of the actual good guy with the gun that saved lives, and it's not in the agenda. The same way my story was not in the agenda. It took actually the NRA to publish my video to get recognized, by millions of Americans of a good guy with a gun. And from there, kind of my story just took, traction, and just for that reason, it's up to us. Share these stories, share your beliefs, and fight for it, because nobody else is going to. So thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you, Cheryl.
Raul's story takes all of this out of the theoretical, right? The idea that, something happens, just call 911, you're good. Why do you need to carry a gun? And if you are going to carry a gun, well, let's put all these hurdles in front of you that you got to have X number hours of training, and you've got to have a special little card that lets you do it, and on and on and on. And Raul, he didn't have military background, he didn't have police background, but he trained on his own. He understood that responsibility. And so when the day came that he was his own first responder, he was the only one that was going to stand between a bad guy with murderous intentions, with the exact same tool that he had, and he was his own first responder and saved his family's lives and saved all the other people in that house. And Raul, I know that it's so hard to ask you to go back to the worst day of your life to help us better understand, but thank you. Thank you so much. We just value you so much. And I encourage each of you to just, I don't know if you're going to hang around or not. I hope you do. Each of you should get to know him. He's just a solid, normal guy. And his wife was pregnant on that day. He's got a 1-year-old now. And she gets to see her daddy's beautiful face with his new glass eye. But he's whole and he's healthy, and we just value. Thank you so much, Raul. Anybody standing? I think we've got some tall chairs somewhere in the building or someplace you can sit. Maybe Cassie or Danny can help you find chairs, but thank you all so much for being here. Stephen Good, you have a reserved spot up here. Whoever you are, masked man. So thank you so much. Hi, Jeff Singh. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. All right, we're going to dive in now with all of our awesome guests. We've got, questions that, I just really want us to collaborate better. And so I really kind of went with 4 key questions. We're going to cover why, who, what, and how about your organizations. And I'm going to start with our hostess, really, because the DC Project is hosting everybody. Diana's like, what, that must be me? And I'm going to start with Diana. You are among one of the youngest of the organizations. Your organization is of the youngest. And the question of why is, what brought you specifically to this place where you founded the organization that we know as the DC Project?
God, because I had absolutely no intention of doing this. I was a police officer. I was a professional competitive shooter, living life like living the dream. I was getting paid to shoot. And then I found myself in a congressman's office, and I was like, hey, is there something that we should be doing as professional shooters to help educate the people in this building? And it was really, that was the God moment of him planting a seed, and then me realizing that I only had standing in Oklahoma, where I was from at the time, and then I had to reach out to other people, and I couldn't really get my husband and another kid that shot, another boy, to be excited about, being in Washington, D.C. So that's what really kind of took my attention towards. It's the way God got me to an all-women's organization. And I just think that it was a whole, and now that's why I continue to pour so much of my life into it, is that we really are making a difference in this space.
What about you specifically benefits your membership and your organization?
What about me?
What about you specifically?
Tenacity, maybe? I don't know. Bossy. I get called bossy a lot. I just aggressively helpful is what I prefer to call it.
I like that. I like that. And how many people in the room are DC project
Think that I'm
delegates
bossy.
or state directors? You're a delegate. You're a delegate.
Yeah.
One way in the back, Cassie. Fantastic. The lives you've touched all across this nation. It's amazing.
It is really cool because now I've seen the fire grow, and I'll be on social media and I'll see somebody in Oregon with the shirts, and I've never met you before. And I'm like, seeing the shirt out in the wild and seeing it is really, really cool. It's just like, oh, it's so fun.
And Michael Gibbs set me up beautifully earlier, and I didn't hit the ball. I'm going to let you hit the ball. Why? What's with the teal? What's that about?
Well, if anybody knows, the Moms Demand Action has a very signature red shirt. They also use orange, so they use colors. They use visual imagery very well, and they're marketing geniuses. So really, that's where we're finding our stride, is that being a counter-visual and counter-voice to Moms Demand Action. They call themselves Grassroots, but they are definitely AstroTurf. They are funded by Bloomberg to the tune of $60 million a year. And with that budget and their marketing expertise, I just watch what they do. And we try to emulate what they do and kind of match them step to step. So when they have a shirt, we have a shirt. I believe that this shirt is very important because it's a conversation without having words. Anybody who sees this shirt has to digest it. They may have a negative or positive reaction to it. I get a lot of, I like your shirts, but I'm sure there's a lot of others. But to see a woman's face or a man's face that's smiling next to a gun, it helps normalize gun ownership. So I think this is another God thing, because I actually designed that shirt and I have absolutely no creativity at all. Every ounce of creativity went into that design.
So I'm smiling. Show us your shirt.
I don't know.
There you go.
There you go.
Show it to the camera.
There it is. It says, educate, don't legislate, because education is the key to safety, not legislation, right? Beautiful. Yeah. So, I mean, good legislation, right? With the legislator sitting right next to me. All right. I'm going to then toss it to the OG. We called you the OG, Philip Van Cleve, with the VCDL. Can you hear me? What brought you to the place where you founded or took a leadership role in that organization?
Yeah, I got it. Well, I didn't follow the organization. I came into it well under a year after it was founded. I was a little behind the power curve. And while I was waiting to get my concealed carry permit, I started doing a lot of research into what kind of gun should I carry and so forth. And the more I read about various other articles in these magazines, the more I learned I've been lied to by schools, by the government, by the press. Everybody had lied to me about my right to keep and bear arms. And basically, they made an enemy that's a lifelong enemy. I mean, I said, okay, I've been lied to. I'm going to make as sure as I can that nobody else is lied to this way. I'm going to do whatever I can to educate people. So I marched down to the General Assembly on my own. I didn't need, because I live in Richmond. I don't live far from the General Assembly. Didn't know who I was going to talk to, what I was going to do. Just in school, did none of this. But I was going to go down there and at least as a one-man army, try to sway things best I could. When I ran right into the arms of what then was the Northern Virginia Citizens Defense League. They had just formed. They had just got the law change and shall issue. And it was perfect because they lived in Northern Virginia, hours away from Richmond when I lived there. So I suddenly became a lobbyist. I knew nothing about botany. Well, when you talk about a learning curve for all of this stuff, and then a few years later, I became vice president and president since 2001. But I got in there because that right is so important, and the lies and the misrepresentations that were being taught, I couldn't stand that. So I've got to do something. And BCL was, a monolith in heaven. It was perfect. It fit perfectly with what I wanted to do. And so that's how I got involved with this stuff.
I love what I'm hearing. He said, I'm a normal guy, and I hit a wall, and I couldn't just sit quiet anymore, and I stepped up, and now he's the president of one of the most powerful citizens defense leagues in the nation. That tells me it's the story of what one man can do, and that any of us can speak up, step up, and start making a difference. So thank you for that, Philip. What about you specifically benefits your membership and your organization?
I'm sorry, could you ask the first part? I'm going to look for some noise.
Absolutely. What about you specifically benefits your membership and organization?
Okay. Well, what about me specifically? I'm just when I'm into something full bore, I'm into it, and consequently, my drive to do this, and I enjoy doing this stuff. I enjoy. First of all, I enjoy being around gun owners. You will never meet nicer people in the country. There are no nicer people. They're respectful. They're just wonderful people. So doing this stuff, knowing that those are the people you're helping, it makes the job easy. It makes it fun. The membership we've got, again, top-notch stuff. The people that are in there are the nicest people you want to meet. I've seen some of them viewed our television, but because this organization teaches them, they knew what to say. They knew how to say it. I'm always proud of seeing that the governors in Virginia out doing, getting interviewed or out in action, speaking in front of city councils and the board of supervisors. It's a wonderful thing. And you're exactly right about one person. I've seen that over and over again. Even in our organization, we had a lady down in Tidewater, and she got a burr in her saddle to go after these $50 fees to get a permit. And looking at the law, it turned out that they can't charge more than what it costs them. And a lot of these localities are using the money in their slush fund. So taking that, she ran with it. Now, Chesapeake's backing down. They're saying, wow, we can't do that. They're going to lower their fees. We're cut them in half. So that was good. One person out there.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. All right, I'm going to come all the way back over here. Mr. Quang Nguyen, State Representative Quang Nguyen, President of the ASRPA. How many hats do you have? About as many as me?
16.
16 hats. I'm going to ask you the same question. What brought you to the place where you took a leadership position as the president of this organization?
So obviously I moved... I escaped communism twice, Vietnam War and California. So I did it twice. So when I got here, being an NRA member and owning guns and practicing and shooting and taking classes, it was just never quite enough for me. So in 2013, I found ASRPA. I became a member, but I got really involved with my daughter being in the competitive side of high-power shooting. And so was it enough to be a member? Not quite. So I decided that, hey, let's do something different. Let's get certified as a coach, a rifle coach. I shoot, might as well be a coach, right? Bunch of kids shooting. And so I became a rifle coach. And was it enough? No, not enough. So I decided that I'm take on the role of being director for the Arizona Scorpions Junior High Power. And by the way, I'm so proud of them. If you haven't heard of them, they have 15 national titles at Camp Perry National matches. And so, kids, I hope you're watching this. Everyone is very proud of you. And was it enough? And it wasn't enough. So then I decided to take on 2 rifle teams and became the state coordinator for our junior rifle teams, the air gun and as well, the small bore as well as a high power team, and that wasn't enough. I wanted to do more. I keep wanting to do more, and stupid me, former President Noble Hathaway said, you know what, Kwong, you're just taking it. So why don't you replace me? I'm like, what? I don't know how to be a president of ASRPA, just a member. So he said, yeah, I'll help you out. So 2019, the board member voted me in as president of ASRPA, and I had no idea what I was going to be doing after that. So I'm like, let's do something different. So decided to run for office. And if you like history of Arizona, Michael.
There's two Michaels sitting next to each other.
In Fenzon. Our first president, very first president of ASRPA was state legislator Carl Hayden. Oh, wow. So believe it or not, he was the first one. I'm the current one. Now, I'm not as smart as he was, but I just enjoy doing this. And now I have the opportunity to push for legislation, continue to support the kids. Because remember, when we don't have kids shooting, we don't have adults shooting. So we need to do everything we can to make sure these kids are, out in the range every day shooting.
That's awesome. And I am a former board member of the ASRPA. I got to help vote you in. And I am currently on the advisory panel, which means that we text each other a lot. Right. So that's... And what is it about you specifically? And you can brag about all the bills you killed if you want to brag about that, but about you specifically that benefits your membership and organization.
First of all, ASRPA is somewhat unlike CDL because CDL is all about legislation and ASRPA is pretty much education, competition, and I love being part of that. But how I add to the equation is, or the formula is, to be able to go down there and represent our state, represent the Second Amendment. It is amazing how I can just sit there and say, I kind of like this. You're not going to suppress my God-given rights, and so that's always been my attitude. So as a freshman, bragging, right? As a freshman, I went down there and somebody said to me, Biden just made a speech in the Rose Garden, and the first thing he said was, we want to repeal PLACA, which is the statute to protect industry from frivolous lawsuit. When I heard that, and I said, let's put a stop to that. Let's introduce it in our state to make sure that we're protected in our state. And so it was late in the season, and I didn't have a bill, so I went to Wendy Rogers, and I said, you have a gun bill. It's germane. Can I borrow it? And she said, what are you going to do with it? I said, I just want to amend it to make sure we protect the industry, manufacturers, retailers from being sued when a gun is used illegally, right? So you can't sue Ford for somebody driving drunk, that old story. And so amazingly, it passed. And as a freshman, that bill was signed by Governor Ducey. And boom, here we are.
And here we are. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm going to dive onto the screen there. F. Paul Vallone. I'm waiting for him to take a great big swig of something to drink, and then I'm going to ask him a question because I'm like that. Are you okay? Fantastic. What brought you to the place, Paul, where you either founded or took a leadership role in the organization Grassroots, North Carolina?
Well, basically back in 1994, I watched C-SPAN as they kept the vote open long enough to buy enough votes to pass the so-called assault weapon ban. And suitably outraged, I started looking for an organization to conduct a rally for the Second Amendment, because at that point in time, I believed rallies were an effective means of political change. I think they might be occasionally now, but I've somewhat revised that belief. In any case, I found a group in Ohio calling themselves the Committee of 1776. And they were holding coordinated rallies in state capitals around the United States on the 4th of July weekend, which was 30 days away. And I said, that's fantastic. Who's organizing the one in North Carolina? And they said, you are. And so with no use of the internet, two other guys and I put about 2,000 people on the Capitol steps in Raleigh on the 4th of July weekend. We had the wherewithal to take names and use that as a mailing list, and incorporated Grassroots North Carolina as a 501c4, and we've been pretty much kicking tail since. The reason I think that I guess I saw the need for the organization in North Carolina. We had just had a summer crime session where the preceding dominant gun rights organization had actually compromised and allowed them to pass a mandatory gun storage bill. And they said, well, this is a compromise. This is the best we could do. And that's when I began to realize that compromise, as my opposition defines it, is a process under which I might lose less than under their original proposal, but we still lose. And so we became a no-compromise gun rights organization and became highly aggressive. Rather than doing the get-along politics type of thing, we actually went out and started kicking politicians' tails. And one of the things that we did that many other organizations do not do is we created a very sophisticated candidate evaluation system and a political action committee that does not throw money at candidates. Instead, we do independent expenditures in terms of mailings, in terms of radio spots, in terms of robocalls, automated texting. And now we've added actually something, a very interesting little bit of technology for geofencing, wherein we can deliver, in the last U.S. Senate election that we helped get Ted Budd elected to the United States Senate, we delivered 1.5 million impressions to mobile devices for Ted Budd.
Whoa.
And
that's like a digital
most
rally,
organizations,
sort of.
I'm sorry?
It's like a digital rally.
Yeah, if you will. But the point is that unless you can deliver pain in the election season for malfeasance done by legislators in the legislative season, you will never be taken seriously. And so basically what we do is we viciously go after politicians who turn, who sell us out one way or the other. And consequently, Machiavelli was right. It's safer to be feared than to be loved. And so that's how we work.
Wow, that's phenomenal. And I think that offensive stance is what's been missing for too many years. We've gotten so reactionary and so, put on the back foot and take a defensive stance. So I'm encouraged by what you're saying. And I do want to take a minute and say, all right, so I am part of a group, my friend Tom in the audience here with Writers USA. They've been doing a rally here in Arizona for 10 years, tacked me and my team on about 7 years or so ago. And you're sitting on the screen right next to the Rally King. I think the VCDL has had the biggest rally ever of all time in the nation. So I definitely hear you, but I like the idea of getting people together physically. So
rallies are actually good means for building organizations. What they are, and consequently, you can add people, you can add numbers, you can create new organizations. I'm not saying there aren't uses to rallies.
Sure, I'm just teasing.
What I often find is that people, for example, Phil had a very successful rally in Richmond, okay? And what year was that, Phil? What?
Is it 2020, are you saying?
Because 2020, you guys have off your elections and for your state offices. And so people wanted me to hold a rally similar to what you held in Richmond the following year. And I said, listen, I can either spend all of my time, money, and energy and organization creating a rally, after which relatively little will have changed, or I can use all of those resources to go out and win an election. And that's what we did. We went out and won the election in, I guess that would have been 2020.
Nice.
And frankly, we've been kicking tail ever since. We've now gained conservative control of the North Carolina Supreme Court. We've gotten conservative control of the North Carolina Court of Appeals. And all of these things, by the way, have been incredibly important because the leftists were using left-leaning judges to make sure we never got voter ID.
Very good.
I'm sorry?
I think that was some airport noise from
Yeah,
Philip's microphone.
Okay.
And so the question, what about you specifically benefits your membership and organization?
Well, let me put it this way. Our mascot, if you will, a cartoon we had drawn, is a pit bull snarling with the Constitution clenched in its jaws, daring anybody to try and take it. All right?
Nice.
The fact is that I guess because I just frankly like beating the daylights out of my opposition, and nobody has ever seen anybody who does this stuff just for sport. Okay, so call up my aggressiveness, I guess.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Somebody who was emphatically bobbing your head in concert and understanding was you, Chris Stone, with what Paul was saying. So I'm going to go to you next. What brought you to the place where you are in this leadership role? And you are the proxy. Eric couldn't make it this tonight to this weekend, but he was very enthusiastic when he said, Chris has got this. So thank you for being here in his stead. But what brought you to this place?
Absolutely. Well, Gun Owners of America was founded in 1976 by H.L. Richardson, who's a great conservative leader in California. I wasn't even born yet, so obviously I'm not the founder of the organization. But I would say really two things, which are awesome to think about. Both my parents are gun owners, and my dad's a career Army officer, and I have a distinct memory. I can't even remember how old I was. I was very young. We were at my grandmother's house in rural North Florida. It was the first time I got to go shooting. He pulled out an old 410 shotgun, which is basically a shotgun designed for children. And I was like, whoa, I love this. This is fun. About a decade later, he got restationed to Northern Virginia. And it just so happened that we went to the same church as Eric Pratt. And one summer when I was in high school looking for a job, Eric was like, hey, do you want to come work at Gun Owners of America? Kind of do like an internship thing. I was like, yeah, absolutely. And so honestly, the way I got involved was an opportunity that was given to me. I got to start out answering the phones, opening mail, fulfilling order shipments and stuff like that. I think I've legitimately talked to gun owners in all 50 states, including places like Hawaii and Massachusetts. There are gun owners there who are passionate about the Second Amendment. And just really over time, being given the opportunity to learn to make mistakes and people showing me how to correct those mistakes and then do different things, work in communications, get to lobby, get to do different things. And now being the state director, kind of overseeing all the operations for our state lobbyists and our volunteers and activists. And so it's been awesome. I've enjoyed doing this really now for about 20 years since I was a kid. And it's just been a fantastic experience. And I'm thankful for people who looked at me and said, we believe in you. We want to give you the opportunity. We want to raise up the next generation and bring more people into this fight.
I love that. And it started with a 410 shotgun.
That's right.
I love it. We always say, get people out on the range, let them experience it for themselves. And so what about you specifically benefits the membership and your organization?
Absolutely. Well, I think kind of like what Paul was saying is I'm highly, highly competitive. What's interesting about that is people who know me, I tend to come across kind of very mellow and laid back, but I love winning. I love winning. I love seeing anti-gun politicians getting driven out of office and changing the laws in states and defeating gun control.
Paul's laughing.
But I think the way for myself where that actually my competitive nature manifests itself is I love taking groups of people and getting them together to work as a team, especially different people someone who's more analytical, someone who's more creative, someone who's, like a Paul, is just, you can let them loose in the legislature and people are terrified. Someone who might be quiet, but can distill complex information. And then organizing them together in a team is, I think, a really unique skill that I bring to our organization. And, for me, that was actually really discovered through coaching sports. I coach football, and I love taking a group of young men and seeing kids who are, okay, you have natural talent, or you really don't even understand anything about this game. But then you piece together, you look at who they are and what they can do, and then you bring them together as a unit and you can see them win. And the reality is I've been given that opportunity at GOA to help fight. I used to work as our federal liaison in Washington, D.C. for a while. So getting to work with members of Congress there to help stop the Toomey Mansion gun control fight in 2013.
Yeah.
Work with other activists there. And right now at GOA, there's about a team of 10 to 12 volunteers doing the state work. And so analyzing everybody's unique skills and bringing out the best in them to affect change, to not just defend the Second Amendment, but to restore it. We need to restore our gun rights. There's a lot of work to do. So that's what I think I bring to our organization.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Michael and Fanson, your organization is a little bit different than the other people on the dais. So describe to us a little bit about what you do besides being the lobbyist for the AZCDL. Describe to us what ASVITA is and your other organization as well.
The Arizona Firearms Industry Trade Association. And before I go into that, you were talking about grass. Okay. When I was in the Marine Corps and we go out to the rifle range, your prep week, your snapping in week was grass week. So
okay,
this is prepping for GRPC.
That's exactly what I intended.
It's a God thing. It's Diana's passing that God thing on to you.
I like it.
Well, this actually, the trade association started out, I was going to gun shops for AZCDL, putting the literature out and refilling the little holders, the applications for membership, and just talking to the owners. And I was already a lobbyist, and I was already lobbying for, as kind of the second under Dave Kopp for AZCDL, and I had other clients as well. But I always ask the gun shop owners, okay, what kind of legislation or regulations are you having problems with that is inhibiting you from doing your business and being more successful? Time and time again, it was the ATF audits. And one of the gun shops out here in Buckeye actually said, we got 40 dings on one audit. We almost lost our FFL because the ATF came in and said, you cannot use this utility bill as form of where the person lives. And I said, well, what are you talking about? He goes, well, you can use SRP, but you can't use APS.
Okay.
They almost lost their business because one agent had this thing, said, well, SRP is nonprofit, APS is a for-profit, so you can't use a for-profit because somebody can get paid off. And I went, well, that's bull. He said, well, that's what it is. I said, well, what's the ATF's agent that you did your audit? Gave it to me. I called him up, confirmed it. I'm like, you know what? This isn't right. Called the National Industry Trade Association. I said, you need to do something about this. We don't do that on a state level. I'm like, okay. bounced it off of Dave Cobb. I said, look, AZCDL, best in the state, best 12 years in a row, best in the country for taking care of gun owners. We have nobody taking care of those where we buy our guns from. He said, go for it. So we launched it, and we've been ever since. So it's taking care of not only the liberty end of owning a firearm, but the liberty and freedom end of being able to be part of the industry. And this goes into not only gun shops and ammunition dealers and manufacturers, but also those banks that want to do business with the firearms industry, those insurance companies that want to cover your insurance. Those type of businesses are all part of the trade association that usually get left out. And Senator Cheryl, we try to help push a bill through and get it signed for a couple of years to stop discrimination on the banking. Unfortunately, we had a governor that vetoed a lot of our bills this year. We had 17 bills, pro-firearms bills get to the governor's desk, which is fantastic. 14 of them got vetoed in the month of April. So that was a new record for me. Does that answer your question?
Congratulations on your record, I guess. I don't know. And then what specifically about you benefits the membership and the organization?
Like everybody else, I don't like to lose. I had an ex that used to tell me, I really hate you because Mike always gets what Mike wants. And it's true. I'll outwork anybody. You may be smarter, you may be stronger, you may whatever. But like Mike Tyson said, I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning because everybody else wakes up at 5. You wake up at 4, I'll wake up at 2. You wake up at 2, I'm not going to sleep because I'm going to work that much harder than you to beat you.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Solutionary type stuff.
Solutionary. I love it. Fantastic. I'm going to come all the way back over here to Holly Sullivan, president of the CCDL. Oh, our other mics are giving up on us, Justin? Oh, gotcha. Okay. So with questions to you, what brought you to the place where you have taken the helm as the president of the Connecticut Citizens Defense League?
So I grew up in a household that had firearms. I grew up in Westchester County, New York, which is the first county right outside of New York City. Gun ownership was not really talked about a lot in my community, but my father owned firearms and he was very proud of it. My grandfather owned firearms, was proud of it, but I grew up in an area where I lived in Yonkers, New York, and if you literally cross over into the next street into the Bronx, you've committed a felony. It was in your own state because you cannot cross into New York City. So I grew up very early kind of seeing how difficult it was in the Northeast. My father eventually passed away, and you might remember there was a newspaper that published the names and addresses of all firearms owners in Westchester County, which included my father. And my mom was a recent widow, and she was terrified. At one point, then I moved to Connecticut, and I moved to town of Southbury, Connecticut. I currently serve on the Board of Selectmen in the town of Southbury, and we sit right next to Newtown, Connecticut. And I just purchased my house, and something really terrible happened one day that I'll never forget, and it changed everything for the people of the state of Connecticut. And watching how fast we went from a relatively free state and having left Westchester County, New York, moved to Connecticut where things were pretty okay for gun owners for the most part, and it changed really, really fast. It was frustrating. And I went to my first CCDL rally. I was pregnant with my daughter. I remember walking around with the big belly, and then in the interim, I found the DC Project. And while I was still kind of growing within CCDL, I got more involved with the DC Project, and I became the Connecticut state state representative for the DC Project, and we started doing the DCP trips. And during that period of time, I got to know Scott Wilson, who was the founder and the original president, and we really, connected on sort of vision, diplomacy, how you get things done in a very, very hard place. And when he made the decision that after 10 years, he was ready to kind of step back and have a family life again. He, talked a lot about running for the position. And I will be running again for my third term. So.
Awesome. And what about you specifically benefits the membership and the organization?
I think I have some really big plans for the organization, and I think that there's a lot that we can be doing that's different. And I think that one of the things that I've done is I've made a lot of networking connections with other individuals, other groups, finding out what works, what doesn't work. And sometimes you have to change gears and change course. I work really closely with our attorneys. In Connecticut, we're also very tight-lipped about what we're doing because, it's not stuff we put out on social media until it gets launched. People will learn about it in our press releases. It's really working with people, working with the right people, and strategizing from that direction.
Fantastic. Thank you. Holly Sullivan. All right. So since we're passing microphones, we'll stop at Alan Corwin, and then Michael Gibbs, you will kind of bring us home on this question. So Alan Corwin, what brought you to a place where you are the, I've named you president, but you are the consultant for the JPFO?
I appreciate the raise.
You're welcome. It's $0, and I'm giving you a 100% raise. So, still $0. But
Thank you, Cheryl. I always remember you for that. How far back should I go with the story? I bought my first BB gun when I was 12 in a summer home in Westchester County, like you were saying. And my dad sent me off to firearms training. I carried a rifle on the bus in the Bronx down to the National Armory where we went shooting. Nobody said anything. It was no big deal. Everything was fine. I met Aaron Zellman at a gun rights policy conference. Aaron is the founder of GRP, of the second. What is Aaron the founder of?
JPFO.
JPFO. I'm in so many groups I can't keep up. Thank you, Mike. We were always a big help. Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership was started by the son of a Holocaust survivor. And he felt that Jews needed to know how to shoot. In fact, we have a booklet called Why Do Jews Need to Shoot? And on the cover of Grandpa says, everybody needs to learn how to shoot. Aaron motivated me. I was really impressed with him. He's our Moses. Carried the banner, understood the problems, big gun owner, big gun advocate. And Aaron got me involved. There was an inner circle. He passed away in 2010, and the organization floundered for a little. And how are we going to do this? How are we going to run it? I was working on their newsletter, and I just ended up consulting to the Inner Circle and JPFO, which has a lot of members. We write briefs with Alan Gottlieb, the head of SAF, for the Supreme Court and other courts on these issues. JPFO is mostly an educational group, and we specifically avoid endorsing or opposing candidates, not part of the charter. But from my chair, education's really the key. And the newsletter, and there's copies outside you can pick up, we're looking to change the language. The left is killing us with language. So we have a proposal now for an aggravated infringement bill. Aggravated infringement. If a legislator deliberately proposes an infringement, that's a violation of their oath that conflicts with the Constitution, and there's no penalty. The Constitution lacks actual penalties. You can vote a person out in 4 years if you control the media, which we don't. And who was it? It was Raul. Is he still around?
He is.
Raul was talking about he couldn't get any traction. Well, the media, the Associated Press once told me, because I asked, how come you're not covering self-defense? It happens every single day by FBI numbers. And they said, well, we don't want to encourage copycats.
Oh, my gosh.
That's their standard. So you're covering murderers all the time? He didn't have a response. And that's another thing they do to us. And I've heard some people here say it. You talk about shootings. Shooting is a sport. These are murders. So they keep talking about a mass shooting and this guy was shooting up a place. This is mass murder. They don't want to say murder because it puts the emphasis on the criminal, which is where it ought to be. And people ought to learn shooting. We actually enacted an education marksmanship class. And in my opinion, in JPFOs, you shouldn't be able to get a diploma, high school diploma, without 1 credit in marksmanship and gun safety. Doesn't that make sense? Now, we passed it as an elective because if it was a requirement, we might not have been able to get it passed. But it's on the books, and we promote things that aren't going to happen, but now the idea is floating. Aggravated infringement. We need this.
New Mexico.
Oh, the New Mexico governor was on our radar. In fact, I was called down at KJZZ to do a story on that, but let me not go too deep in that direction. I wanted to mention something about language, if I may. Is anybody in here pro-gun? I can't hear you. Are you pro-gun? I still can't hear you. Are you pro-gun? There's a problem with saying that. Because if you're pro-gun, what's the other side? Anti-gun. They think that's the right position. And if you're pro-gun, you're a maniac. I'd suggest that you're pro-rights.
Yes.
And if you're pro-rights, what's the other side?
Anti-rights.
Anti-rights. We win on the language if we use the right words. You should never say high-cap magazine. It's standard capacity magazine, the kind the police use, because more ammunition is safer. They see it backwards. I had one other. Oh, well, I was going to ask if anybody remembers their first gun. Anybody? Raise your hand if you remember your first gun. Let me hear what it was all at the same time. You ready? 1, 2, 3.
22.
Everybody remembers their first gun. You should ask people, what was your first gun? And get them energized and remember it and start a conversation. And when you meet somebody who says, and I just met a person like this, who says, oh, I don't have a gun. I don't want a gun. That's dangerous. You hate guns, right? Yes, I hate guns. It's not good to hate. The language kills us, and we got to turn it around. And JPFO is working on that, and I'm working on that with a group called the Umbrella Group of Journalists on the Right Side. And I like that double entendre. We're on the right side.
Yeah.
We're not right-leaning, right-wing conservative. We're on the right side. And the rest are on the dark side.
Very good.
But JPFO is working hard. One last thing.
Yes.
Aaron was always amazed that he didn't get more Jews to join the group. And probably half the membership is not Jewish. Because a lot of people recognize that what the Jews went through could happen to all of us. And we have seen mass formation, which is that group psychosis in Germany. We saw it in Cambodia. We saw it in China. It's still going on. We saw it in Russia. And we're experiencing it with people who are actually the unwoke. They think they're woke, but they don't get it. They're bass-ackwards. They're upside down. And JPFO fights that. We do have a newsletter out there with a description of aggravated infringement and some other issues, and I encourage you to get one.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I think you've just demonstrated what specifically about you benefits your membership and organization. But what would you say about you specifically?
Well, I'm a high-energy guy. You can see that. I've been a writer for 30 years, and I want to express myself. I have a lot to say. I was the editor of JPFO's Bill of Rights Sentinel for 8 years, and I have a passion about this. I want to spread that passion. I want other people to get it. I debate people who do not get it, and I'm pretty good at turning them around. And in fact, we have a legislator, I won't mention her name, but she found out that guns are good from me because she was neutral or didn't get it. Guns are good. Guns save lives. Guns protect you. Guns are the reason America's still free. And the media won't say that. And I can't not say that.
Nice.
So there's the answer.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. And you know what? That little flip of the words, are you pro-gun? No, you're really pro-rights. I fell for that several years ago, and it has stayed with me. I have Alan Corwin's voice stuck in my brain. So
when you get a news reporter who says, so you're really pro-gun, aren't you? You look at him and you say, well, I'm pro-rights. What are you?
Nice. All right.
And then they change the subject.
And then you change the subject. All right. And last but absolutely not least, Michael Gibbs, president of the AZCDL.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question, Bob?
Definitely. What brought you to the place where you have taken this leadership role as president of the AZCDL?
Well, I was born a poor black Hawaiian. Wrong story. Sorry.
Wrong story. What is that from The Jerk? The movie The Jerk?
Steve Martin. He's a funny guy.
He is.
Well, I'm embarrassed in some audiences to admit that I was born in Chicago, where my dad's family was from.
You made it out.
But when I was 7, we moved to Colorado. And I'm not sure if it's fair to say that we absorbed a Western lifestyle or it absorbed us. But when I grew up, we had motorcycles and guns and horses and, wore cowboy hats and, embraced everything that represented, in my mind, freedom. My brother actually had one of his horses in the backyard when she decided to give birth, and I midwifed that process. It was pretty, of course, I didn't, good thing it all happened pretty naturally because I didn't know anything about what to do. But anyway, I moved to Arizona when I got out of college, and, everything here, struck me as being very much like in Colorado. I could relate to folks. But I started realizing that a lot of people really didn't understand why things are the way they are. And my training it was in engineering. People say, what do you do for a living? Well, I'm an engineer. What do engineers do? Well, they solve problems, It doesn't really matter what area it is. You give me a problem, I'm going to try to figure out inside or outside the box, what are the things that we could do to solve this problem, And I started realizing the main problem is people don't understand our form of government. We throw around words all the time, and the thing that just gets under my skin, and I know Alan's a big guy, a big word guy, is when people refer to the United States as democracy.
I knew you were going to say that.
And I tell them all the time, the founders probably considered democracy as a form of governance, and they rejected it. Okay. But anyway, so along the way, I ended up, delving into those areas and ended up taking the program that the Center for Self-Governance offers and learned so much about the notions of delegated authority and about where do people in positions of authority get that authority? How does it end up on their plate that they get to make the decisions that they do for us? And then about a year after AZCDL was founded, it was 18 years ago, 2005, about a year after they formed, I became aware of them and immediately joined as a life member. And then over the years, volunteered at our recruiting tables and things like that and kind of learned the ropes. And then at one point, Dave Kopp said, hey, why don't you come down to the Capitol with us and learn how to be a lobbyist? And I said, okay, let me ask my boss for some time off of work during the work week. But for 3 years, I got to follow him around and follow Mike around some and learn how that process works. There's an awful lot that goes on behind the scenes that most people have no awareness of. And it's understanding how that game is played that really can make you successful in terms of legislation and lobbying, so forth. And then eventually they said, you hang around a lot and you're a real pest, so why don't you be vice president of the organization for a while? And I said, okay, what do I do? And I said, well, you basically follow Dave around and do whatever he tells you. And that's what I was already doing, so it seemed easy job. And then, recently when Dave's illness became more acute and he started thinking ahead and deciding that, we needed to make plans for the future, he decided that Cheryl and I should be running the show. And so it's a terrifying thing, but it's also incredibly rewarding. So I don't know. Did that answer the question?
It did.
Okay.
It did. And, we have mentioned Dave Kopp's name a few times, and we did lose him to cancer, what was it, a little over a year ago now? And a tremendous loss to, I think, the entire nation, because what happens in Arizona, impacts everywhere. But Dave Kopp was tremendous, and he was just a grower of people and an encourager of people. I would have never thought that I would be, sitting as the vice president of the Arizona Citizens Defense League, but he saw something in me and just kept. I think it's because I just kept saying yes. So he said, if you want to get done, look for busy people to do it. And
Can I brag up ACCDL a little bit?
please.
I don't want to belabor it. I know everybody's been sitting here a long time, but so in 2005, 4 guys sitting at a little 50s style diner decided they were not happy with Arizona's gun laws. Here we are 18 years later, we have 21,000 members. We've managed to get 63 laws signed or bills signed into law by 3 different governors and stopped probably more than 150 anti-rights bills. Probably more than that. Those were the figures that Charles gave me last year. So
That's fantastic. And then what about you specifically benefits our membership and organization?
Well, I think like Chris, people often see me and think of me as someone who's mild-mannered, maybe a little diplomatic, well-spoken. But behind that veneer, I'm stubborn as hell. And for you Star Trek fans out there, I don't believe in the no-win scenario. So, for me, again, applying that mentality of solving problems, it's, all right, we've come up against an obstacle that, seems insurmountable, but it's not, and we'll find a way to get around it. And so I'd like to think that's what I bring to it.
Amen. That's awesome. All right. So now we go to the who. So back to Diana. This is a 2-part question, and we're going to speed things up a little bit to get through some of these. Who are your target audiences, and has that changed over time? And what measures is your organization taking to move with cultural and political changes?
Well, I think when I started, we were targeting legislators and trying to explain to them that this is a face of a gun owner, and influence them. But now I think our audience is anybody in Moms Demand Action. I really feel like if we had an audience with their entire membership, that we could take half of them, because you could just give them another narrative that they've never heard before. And our friends, our families, and our neighbors. And that's why it's important for all of us to understand how to, sometimes I liken being a Second Amendment advocate to being a Christian. If you don't know Christ, if you don't read the Bible, if you don't study why you believe that, you can't articulate that to anybody. You can't influence anybody. And it's the same thing with liberty in America. It's the same thing with the Second Amendment. If you don't understand what those talking points are and why you believe what you believe, why does anybody need an AR-15? If you can't answer that in 10 seconds, you've lost. So you practice those answers. So was that it? What was the last one?
Just what measures are you taking to move with cultural and political changes?
I'll pass. There's a lot of people up here.
Okay, very good. I'm going to go to right next to you, Chris, now that we're passing microphones. So, Chris, who are your target audiences, and has that changed over time? And what measures is your organization taking to move with cultural and political changes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our target audience is gun owners anywhere in the United States of America. And they come in all backgrounds and shapes and sizes, and capturing them to let them know what their legislators are doing, what's going on, and that as a grassroots activist, they have the power to hold legislators accountable. And then linking those actions of what legislators do back to the election season, and realizing and emboldening people that they have the power to change government, because, well, first of all, we are the government.
Thank you.
And we send people there to represent us and defend the Constitution. And when they do not, they need to be removed from office.
Amen. With
the power of the people. And so that's our goal, is to capture those individuals. As far as the audience changing over time, from my perspective, and even in this room, right, we probably have people who are from the baby boomer generation, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z. That's an awesome thing. We want to speak to all of those generations if you care about guns. And so for us, as kind of that message shifts and changes over times with advancements, we have a bulk of our membership who are older Americans, and they want to receive physical mail, physical newsletters sent to them with postage. We have individuals like myself who say, I don't do anything through the mail unless I'm forced to. I'd rather follow you on Instagram, Facebook, email. And so for us, and I think for groups in general, study your list, study your membership, the age groups, the demographics, the dynamics, and communicate with them how they want to be communicated to. That way you connect and bridge across the generations, and you can reach new individuals. We've been doing that with our Empowered 2A section of our organization, which is targeted toward gun rights for women. Antonio Okafor is one of our representatives, and she is reaching the African-American Black audience, and it is the fastest growing demographic of gun owners in the nation. And she's reaching them. And so I think it's just important for your organization to sit down and figure that out about your membership and how to talk to them, how they want to be reached and spoken to.
Very good. Thank you. Holly, we'll go to you next. What's your target audience says, and has it changed over time? What measures is your organization taking to move with cultural and political changes?
So our target audience is anyone in the state of Connecticut who just believes that it's the right thing. They don't have to be a gun owner. And for a lot of people, they're not ready to be a gun owner. That's okay. But do you stand with it? Do you believe in it? And my personal target audience has kind of shifted. I think a couple of years ago when I came into this, and there were a lot of folks that were, I hate to call them the keyboard warriors, and I used to be like, how do I get them to change? And quite frankly, I don't care anymore, because they're never going to change. I don't care. They can come in and say, you don't do this well enough, you do it. They don't show up. Don't put any more effort into them. Where's the fresh blood? And that's my target audience, because I've got some really young, energetic, excited folks that are coming in, and I want to teach them what I've learned from those that came before me so that they have the tools to do it, because that group will never move. Let it go. This group, teach them how to move. So my target audience has changed just from experience. And then as far as like social, I live in a really liberal state. Like, I don't know if you guys know like how liberal Connecticut is. It's like super liberal. I think one of the things that you just need to do is stay single issue. And I think that no matter what, I welcome, we have an outreach group. We have an urban engagement group. So we're trying to get anybody that lives in our urban communities to get them involved with how are you doing? Are you a legal gun owner? Talking to them. But at its core, it needs to stay single issue and don't get distracted by going too niche into everybody's personal interests, but welcome them and meet them where they are, no matter what. Like wherever they're coming from, meet them where they are, but that doesn't mean that we necessarily have to take on their special interests. Does that make sense?
Understood. Yeah, thank you. Kwong, we'll go to you next. And then after that, I'm going to start with Paul and then work my way. So when you're done, pass that microphone all the way down. All right.
So to answer your question, and you've been a board member for a long time too, so you know what I'm talking about. But we really concentrate on the competitive side of shooting. We encourage people to join the various teams, and we concentrate on young adults as well. Because like I said earlier, if you don't have young shooters, you don't have older shooters. And so we get into a point where we have multiple divisions of, shotguns and high power and small bore air and so on. And we're trying to keep the targeted audience to be excited every time they come to a meeting, and we talk, annual meeting is full of shooters division, and, get to brag a little bit. The target hasn't changed, but as the president myself, I concentrate more on getting legislators to be involved with the state association. And I know you two, Paul and Chris, you talk about holding people, feet to the fire when it comes to respecting the Constitution and the Second Amendment. I want to go a little further, and you and I had this conversation yesterday. If you look in the audience, we have two legislators. you invited a bunch of legislators.
Several of them were the Democrats that really need to hear this.
Right. So I'm going to hit on the Democrats real quick. Democrats love guns. They want to come to me and they said, hey, Rip Wen, you want to teach me how to shoot since you're one of the coaches? I would love to, but under one condition. They will always say, under one condition, no pictures. So my reply was, no deal. If you're too embarrassed to be with a gun, I don't want to be near you. That's it. It's very simple. And it is applicable to both Republicans and Democrats, right? If you look in the audience, once again, you have two legislators. When it comes to legislators, I don't care if you have an R and a D behind you. I want to know what you've done for the Second Amendment lately. So the question is, all right, is it a talking point? I own a gun, so therefore I'm a pro-gun guy, right? And so what am I doing it for? Because I want to get elected. I want you to elect me because I'm just going to tell you I support the Second Amendment. If you remember earlier when I was saying, it's never enough for me. I always look for that next thing that I can do to advance the cause. I mean, I speak to this man, Michael I over here, 3 times a day. Not 3 times a week. It's 3 times a day. How can I do my job better? I don't know anything. I'm just the guy that got elected. I don't know anything. But what I know is how to ask the questions. How do I get better? And so I don't want Republicans or Democrats to say, I have a gun, I'm an NRA member, still therefore I'm pro-gun, you have to vote for me. But when you actually sit down and say, when we have a 2A rally like this, where were you? Why aren't you here? Don't tell me you own a gun. It's because Obama owns a gun too. So if all things equal, you're not any better, right? So I said, what was the last thing you did to advance the Second Amendment, to protect it? So that's where I would drill these legislators. I don't care which brand they're from. Drill them. What did you do? Did you teach? Did you coach? Did you take your kids out? What exactly did you do? Are you a member of ASRPA? Are you a member of CDL? Are you a member of Guns Owners of America? You're a member of anything. Mm-hmm. So that's where, and as the legislators, and a divided government, because obviously we have a Democrat for a governor. Mm-hmm. So she vetoed 143 bills this year, right? She embarrassed just about every other governor by vetoing just about everything. So is it possible for guys like me to introduce a gun law and get it signed? Does it make sense for me to spend hours and hours on a gun bill? And Frank, he's laughing over there. Can we get it signed? The answer is no. But here's the trick. It's not what I do up front. It's what I do behind the scenes as chairman of judiciary. The first thing I did was I went to the Speaker of the House and I said, give me all your gun bills, good or bad. Give them all to me. So this year I killed 11 anti-Second Amendment bills. So if you can't get a bill passed, do something. Go kill a bunch of them. And I killed 6 abortion bills too, on top of that. So there are a lot of things that you can do as a legislator. And, once again, I don't know all the answers, so I depend on everybody here to give me the answer and the path. I'm just the guy getting the things done, but you need to help me out. You need to help me out. So hopefully that answered it.
I think it did. Go ahead and pass that down to Michael and Fanson, but we're going to go to F. Paul Vallone. But I do want to say, with the question of what are you doing with the changes in culture and political, well, you stepped up, you're serving. If you hadn't have been serving this last session, you wouldn't have been able to kill all of those bad bills. And in our Arizona legislature, we only have a +1 of Republicans on the House and the Senate. And now we've got the veto queen for a governor. And so it shouldn't even matter. Our +1 Republican shouldn't even matter because everybody takes the same oath to the same document to support and protect the same document, but somehow it's become a political football. And so here we are, and we've allowed it to matter that we have a +1. And, you know, by the next election, who knows what's going to happen? We would have never believed that we would have a Democrat as our governor, and yet we do. And so all this work we do, it just hits a veto wall, but it doesn't mean that we stop. So thank you for that. Paul, question was, who are your target audiences, and has it changed over time? And what are you doing to move with cultural and political changes?
Well, one of our core missions has always been to reach a core constituency of supporters well beyond our paid membership, which is why we, on a typical month, may issue 2 million to 2.5 million email legislative alerts to people who are not even our members necessarily, most of whom are not our members. To that end, a number of years ago, when the concealed handgun permit holder database was still public record, we got that list and we data matched it against the State Board of Elections voter database to produce a list of roughly 500,000 gun-owning voters. And we had all the information on them that the State Board of Elections had. When they voted, their party affiliation, do they vote primaries, just generals, whatever the case it may be. And so that allowed us to do a lot of outreach and gave us a very large list very quickly to reach people, particularly during elections. With postcard election alerts, not unlike what the NRA sends into districts, only we would send more of them. That said, you're right. The demographics have changed over the last few years, both good and bad in North Carolina. The good news, if you will, was that the defund police movement and the riots and looting and, mayhem across the country created millions of new gun owners. And those people now began to realize that the police could not protect them and that they had to protect themselves. And so we have done what we could to bring those people into the fold using social media. And quite frankly, our philosophy is anytime you can get media is a good time. Even if the media is negative to your organization, getting your name out there as often as possible is what's going to spread your organization, bring people into the fold. We've actually hired a professional conservative social media company to help us run our Facebook page, for example. The other thing that we're experiencing in North Carolina is because we are becoming increasingly a purple state as people move into the state. And so consequently, that's something we haven't necessarily been able to entirely, compensate for. So yeah, the message is changing. It used to be that we could use, I do a lot of freelance op-ed writing for newspapers. But of course now, most of the major newspapers in our state will not allow dissenting viewpoints from their leftist viewpoints. So that has become a problem because we've seen media bifurcate. Now we have a conservative media and we have a liberal media, and never the twain shall meet. So that's becoming a problem as it is. So I guess all I can say is it's a work in progress.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Michael and Fanson, same question. Target audiences, has it changed?
Well, I want to hit on something real quick. Mm-hmm. What Representative Wynn said. He killed, and this is very, it goes to the kind of the culture here in Arizona. Representative Wynn killed 11 anti-freedom bills in Judiciary Committee. These are the ones that made it through the Senate and hopped over or got past the thing. We killed 20 before that. AZCL and the legislators and things like that. A 10-minute meeting with the speaker backed up by Representative Wynn, reminding the Speaker of the House, hey, those bills are bad. So overall, there were 31 bad bills that didn't go through. 143 vetoes. We had over 14 good pro-Second Amendment bills get to the governor's desk. So 10% of her vetoes were our freedom bills.
Nice.
So,
Next.
I just wanted to kind of hit that.
Yes.
So to answer your question, target audience, and has it changed? When we started Arizona Firearms Industry Trade Association, it was to help protect the gun shops, and realized very quickly that there were other pro-Second Amendment in the industry or pro-Second Amendment businesses that needed protection as well. So it quickly morphed into kind of a larger demographic. As far as who it is now, any business, almost like a chamber of commerce for the firearms industry. Anybody that has anything to do with anything with the firearms industry, whether you could be a doctor that takes care of gunshot wounds, I mean, or teaches nurses that teach, first responder things, or anybody. It doesn't matter. If you support the Second Amendment and want to advance the industry, that's the target.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it did. Both of them. Thank you so much. And for the reminder, yes, for the reminder of how important an organization like the AZCDL is, and to have a lobbyist voice that understands the landscape and the personalities and has built relationships, because really it all comes down to relationships, right? So great reminder. Michael Gibbs, target audiences, has it changed over time?
I did it again, I'm sorry.
I would say it is changing. The way that the organization grew in its early years was primarily by setting up a table at gun shows and spreading the gospel. So almost all of the members initially came from that type of recruiting effort. Those were hit heavily by the pandemic. A lot of shows were shut down, weren't happening, whatever. And that, of course, presented an opportunity to think about, well, maybe that's not the only way we should be approaching people. Because if you look at the demographics we have now, 7.5 million people in Arizona, estimates are around 40% of those people are firearms owners. 1% of them are AZCDL members who are willing to stand up, pay a few bucks, and add their voice, Now, in some cases, we could do a better job of reaching out to folks, but I think a lot of it is apathy. A lot of my gun-owning friends are like, oh, well, you guys will take care of it. I don't need to get involved in it. It's like, that's not how it works. The reason why Mike or I or Dave Kopp could walk into the office of a legislator and have a conversation with them is because of the involvement of our members. Otherwise, it's just some guys. Why would I talk to them, So we've been really trying to think about how we can expand that. I mean, there's nothing I'd love to see more than, a lot more women join. I'd like to see a lot of people from various ethnic minorities join, whatever. Pretty soon we'll be the minorities. Doesn't matter. I want people of every color, shape, and persuasion to be members. And so it's a question of how do we find those people? How do we message to them in a way that's meaningful to them, and makes them say, hey, this is great. I should join these people. I want them to feel welcome. And so we're in the process of figuring out how to do that. Yes. We got a whole lot of old white guys, and that's fine, but that's not good enough.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you for that. And we'll finish that question with Alan Corwin. But a friend of mine recently showed me a picture of the organization or the last gun rights policy conference. And was like laughing about it and said, well, this is why I'm not coming. He's a younger guy, right? And it's a picture of old white guys and gals, right? And was laughing about it and saying, well, why would I show up to that? And I'm like, okay, first of all, we've been holding the line for you, young pup, right? How about you step up? Thank you. Thank you. What if we weren't holding the line for you, darling boy? It really hit me in a place that I felt like that right there needs to be maybe spoken more. Like, instead of always denigrating, oh, it's a bunch of old white people, old white guys. Well, praise God for the people that have been holding the line. You know, if you want to hold the line, there is plenty of room for you. Whatever, as you said, size, shape, color, persuasion, we welcome you. We are not, to our knowledge, we are not velvet roping it. And if we are, please help us understand how to stop velvet roping it, because we want everybody to take their rights that seriously. All right. I'll calm down. I'll take a breath. I'll get off my soapbox and pass it to Alan Corwin, who your target audience is, and has it changed over time? Clearly, you said you've branched out beyond just the Jewish community.
First of all, power to us old white guys.
Yes.
And we won World War II.
Thank you.
And that's why you're not speaking German. And this matters. Okay. Well, when Aaron started JPFO in 1989, he thought all the Jews would join because they had the history of the Holocaust. They've been persecuted since the Bible. Mm-hmm. Some of it, whatever. He was surprised they didn't join, and he was surprised how many non-Jews, how many secular people, how many non-religious people, how many from the Judeo-Christian community, emphasis on Christian, joined. Mm-hmm. And it's maybe half the membership. Alan Gottlieb says it's more than half. I haven't checked their pants, so I don't really know.
TMI.
See, it's free speech, right? I'm allowed to say. And you guys all know that, right? A gun check.
Yeah.
Thank you, Frank. So we have found lately that the Orthodox community is with us 100%. In the Orthodox temples, they know who's carrying. They encourage it. We used to meet in an Orthodox education facility, and the rabbi said, can some of you come with us to the picnic? It's nice to have armed people around. So the Orthodox community gets it really solidly. The Reform community, there's 3 levels in Judaism, Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform. The Reform are ginos, Jews in name only. And they lead the anti-gun movement. The biggest anti-rights movement in the legislature, in the federal government, are Jews. I won't name them, but the names give it away, right? Schumer, he's running it, and he is anti-rights. By the way, when you were talking about anti-gun and pro-gun, it's anti-rights and pro-rights, but that's for later. Yeah. It's hard to make the change, but then it flows trippingly from the tongue, and you win. You win.
Yeah, there you go. You win with win.
Didn't mean that. We found that the riots, in fact, Robin, sitting back there quietly, wrote an article on the cover of the Bill of Rights Sentinel that JPFO publishes about how adversity changes you. And you're from Connecticut. We had a professional who wrote under a pen name, which we encourage if you're scared of it. The Riots Changed Me was the title. And he had his conservative friends, or a whole range of friends came to him and said, hey, you know about guns. How do I buy a gun? And in Connecticut, it was hard to do. Here, you can buy a gun like a book. People don't realize that. You can carry a book anywhere. You can carry a gun anywhere. There's a name for that. Freedom. A lot of people don't get that. I just gave a talk to an anti-gun batch of humanists.
Nice.
And
anti-rights.
Thank you.
You got him.
I stand corrected. And now I forgot my point, so I'll just move on.
The rabbi got rabbied.
The rabbi got rabbied. I'm not a rabbi. I'm just a person. Rabbi actually means teacher, so we're all rabbis. How about that?
That's why I called you a rabbi.
Well, not officially, although I have taught writing at all 10 Maricopa community colleges, and I have a long track record. I've gotten older. You know, if you get older and you have a lot of fun, your hair turns white. That's what's happening here. When you mentioned something that stuck, no pictures. I'd like to suggest an alternate approach. If somebody wants to go to the range, that changes them and practically turns them pro-rights, and they want to shoot that gun and you have more ammo. If they won't take a picture, note it, maybe slap them verbally a little, but take them to the range, let them learn, and it's a first step. And they'll go back again. Eventually, they'll campaign.
The liberal legislators.
That counts.
They're in a different class. I'm sorry.
Well,
they kill
are.
our bills.
They are, and we kill theirs, right? Anybody introducing an anti-rights bill should be brought up on charges for aggravated infringement. They took an oath. They're violating it.
All right.
Knowingly. So there you go. I think
Awesome. Thank
I've spent
you.
enough time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We have to do a pretty quick lightning round. I was trying to make sure we landed this plane pretty close to 8 o'clock. And I could just keep talking to y'all all night. I find this just wonderful and enriching. But it's so important that we are passing that baton forward. Like my young friend that, wants to laugh at all of us old, graying hair people. We have to be able to capture them. We have to be able to bring them in. We have to be able to help them feel like it is their responsibility. I have an awesome friend that's in the audience here, Rhonda Mary. Raise your hand, Rhonda. She's actually going to be teaching on some of this stuff at AmCon tomorrow. It's for Pro 2A Media. We're sold out, I'm happy to say, but we've asked her back now 2 years in a row to help us know if we have velvet ropes, how do we remove those velvet ropes? So you have to actually ask the questions sometimes. And I know that she has great ideas because I've been following her on her Rhonda Mary Speaks. Rhonda Mary, what's your Instagram?
Rhonda Mary, Rhonda Mary videos. I am Rhonda Mary. If we're about how many times I got knocked out.
Yeah. And she is wonderful with her content. It's fun, it's engaging, it's lively. She talks about, just being a female gun owner, how to carry in different places on your body. And she's super serious about her rights. And she's passionate and it's infectious. So we have to ask the younger generation, how do we serve you better? Like, how do we help you help us? So succession plan. How do we pass the baton forward? How do your organizations work cohesively and collaboratively with other organizations? And this really needs to be a little bit of a lightning round. I'm going to give, spoiler alert, that we're going to end with Holly, because Holly actually brought a PowerPoint presentation to give us some really cool ideas that she has been working on for the last probably two years. So let's just know that it's going to end on Holly, but I'm going to start with Paul and work our way around past Holly, go to Kwong. But what is your organization doing for succession? How are you passing the baton forward? How are you working collaboratively with other organizations as you move forward?
Well, first off, running an all-volunteer organization should be a constant talent search. You should be searching for people who have particular skills, leadership skills in particular, or technical skills, and we cultivate those people very actively. And consequently, right now, I have a vice president who will take the reins when I'm no longer able to do this. Now, in terms of, what was the second part of your question? Collaboratively with other organizations. We've been working, pretty heavily with GOA and always have, but in particular lately, we've been suing sheriffs for obstructing concealed handgun permits and obstructing pistol purchase permits, although we've now repealed that Jim Crow era law. And we've also, by the way, joined with the Second Amendment Foundation on seminal litigation in the state of North Carolina. Particularly, we're using Alan Gura as our counsel shortly after he won the McDonald case. We sued over North Carolina's state of emergency gun ban, and unfortunately we won, so it never went to any higher courts because the state chose not to repeal it. But we work closely with organizations, particularly with regard to litigation and particularly with regard to crossover alerts and making sure that we are both applying pressure to the politicians who frankly need to hear it most.
Very good. I appreciate that. All right, Michael and Fanson, what kind of succession plan and passing the baton ahead and that kind of work? I know you're a great collaborator, but for your organization as FIDA, what are your future plans for that?
I've been from day one. I've always tried to have an exit strategy. From the first day I started lobbying, I said, okay, well, what can I do? How can I leave this and leave it better? Out of my 4 employees, 3 of them had 0 policy experience. The only thing I asked of them is that they be teachable. I can teach you everything that you need to know, but you need to want to be teachable. And then teaching the history background. You know, one of the coolest things about Arizona is our state flag, and people don't realize that our state flag was actually the ASRPA rifle team's flag at Camp Perry. Mm-hmm. That's how it was adopted. Mm-hmm. So we have a long history of firearms rights and protections here in Arizona, and that's how I collaborate. That's how I pass it on. And if they know that, they can hold steady.
Very good. All right, Michael Gibbs.
I think AGCDL is known as, a political lobbying organization. That's our bread and butter. Now, lobbyists often have, negative connotations in a lot of people's minds. I can assure you we only use our powers for good. But I think of it as a very specialized area. So, Cheryl, we have an open action item to start grooming new members of our board and stuff and teaching them, not trying to put constraints on what's possible in the future, but to teach them how we got to where we are today, how we accomplish what we accomplish, and so forth, so that, they will be in a position to assume more important roles, as the need arises. So that's something, that we've been working on. So, and we're behind on it. We need to get ahead on it. So.
Absolutely. Are you at liberty to share sort of our future plans to move away from not just lobbying?
I think you just did.
I didn't say what it was.
So if any of you saw our last newsletter, the cover page article was Winds of Change. And it talks about a number of things. I don't know if any of you had noticed it or not, but the first week in office, our new governor decided to have a photo op with the demanding moms and Representative Longden in her office. She wouldn't even have a meeting with us. Mike tried to get just to have us sit down and chat with her, and she would not even talk to us or even her staff. So the writing is on the wall. For the last 18 years, we've basically had, the wind behind us. The governor raised $2.5 million, I think it was, to have an inauguration party for herself. She spent $200,000 of that on the party. I'm sure it was a good party. The rest of it, she has already said she's going to use to try to flip the legislature. She wants a Democratic majority in both houses. If she's successful at that, the 12 bills that Representative Longden introduced, all of which were directly aimed at firearms and were anti-freedom bills, would probably survive the legislative process. And of course, the governor would sign them. So we are taking active steps to come up with alternate ways to protect what we've worked on and built all this time. So let's just say that we are already in touch with a number of the organizations, both state level and national level, to look at what it would take to become more involved in judicial activism as well as legislative activism. How's that?
I like it. Very, very diplomatic of you. All right, Alan Corwin, succession plans, moving forward, collaboration.
We don't have any. And that's an interesting thought. And maybe we should.
For sure.
So I'll be talking about that. And we're having a roundtable, JPFO roundtable, which we've done several years in a row now, after sundown on Saturday in the hotel. We'll pick a location, and the restaurant actually has a back room. I think that's where it's going to be. You're welcome to come, and let's talk about that particular point. Now, we have a few things going on to help us continue. We have an ambassador program, and I encourage this. All you do is ask somebody if they'd like to be an ambassador for your group. They feel empowered. You don't have to pay them. We make business cards with the company logo, and now we have ambassadors around the country. And some of these guys and a gal are really high-placed, educated professionals making lots of money. One guy did $100 million worth of investment, and he's an ambassador. And he comes up with ideas. It empowered him, and it was an easy program. We also ran a Second Amendment contest for youngsters. Not all the schools would allow it. And in fact, a lot of schools, as you know, are very dedicated anti-rights activists. But a contest, and one of our members put up, I forget how much, the big prize was $500 in cash, and then there were prizes underneath. So he put up maybe $1,000 less. Some of you, I'm sure, could manage that. And the teachers wanted to give money to the students. So that seemed to work. And
Place to nest.
Speak into the microphone there, Paul.
Ow.
Oh, his dog. Get a dog. We have also allied with some other groups. Judicial Watch is now pursuing an FOIA on an issue that's near and dear to all of us because we instigated that. And although I think they were looking at it all along, but whatever, that worked. Judicial Watch and the Heritage Foundation, which you and I have both worked with. You have that booklet?
I do,
Hold it
somewhere
up to
in
the
my
camera.
pile.
There are Heritage Foundation booklets.
There you
it
go.
is. Hold
Each
it up
of you
and
have
face
one
the
of
camera.
these.
This is the best single description of the Second Amendment I think I've ever read. It's terse, it's on the money, it's completely accurate, it's factual, it's easy reading. Move that around to people, and then they get a little history. You know that history in the schools is in the trash. They're teaching make-believe, and many of the anti-rights arguments are make-believe. Invisible guns, ghost guns. They make this stuff up. It's nonsense. So I'm back to words again.
Very good. Diana, succession plan, passing the baton, collaborations.
Beth Walker and anybody who wants to be safe.
Well, that's one thing.
Beth Walker is
21.
a 21-year-old.
She's been with us from the beginning, and I don't want to let her go. You know, she's flying the coop because she's got a real job, and it's hard to get her to stay on us, but I won't let her go, so.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. She runs our social media for DC Project, and she's really terrific. So I think you chose well there. All right, GOA, Chris, what are you all doing for succession, baton passing, and collaboration?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm not on the board of GOA, maybe someday, but so I can't answer that particularly from their point of view. But I would say, honestly, what they did with me, give people an opportunity. Obviously, that means, we should always vet the people that we bring into your organization. But if there's a person, doesn't matter how old, how young, but give them an opportunity. You know, obviously you don't want to give somebody so much rope that they hang themselves, but give them enough that they can go out, they can fail and make mistakes and learn. And then when they learn from that, if they're hungry, give them a little more, and repeat that cycle. And I think in a lot of ways that will take care of itself and bring people in from different perspectives with different talents. I'm thinking of all the other directors I work with at GUA who just think and approach things differently than me. And it's been such an incredible environment to work in. And so I think that is a great approach. And, you know, lastly, I would say from the 50,000 point of view as grassroots activists, just to everyone in this room, you must indoctrinate your kids and your grandkids. I mean, seriously, like, I think that's become like a dirty word, but the reality is Netflix is indoctrinating your kids. Disney Plus is. Hey, look, I have sisters who work in the school system. The schools are indoctrinating your kids. They might have a good teacher, but the school system is not indoctrinating them in the right way. If we want to be having this conversation 50 years from now, we must indoctrinate our kids. My son shows up to school and he tells his teacher that his dad makes sure Joe Biden doesn't take our guns away. And that's what he tells his friends.
Nice.
And so we got to carry that forth.
Holly, you can jump up on the stage and start working on your thing because you're going to do your PowerPoint from up there. And then I'm going to have Kwong answer. But I do want to just touch back on that. I know that GOA is a tremendous, collaborator. Eric Pratt has been so generous with the DC project. We're going to collaborate on something during our October fly-in, right, Diana? So our training day.
So anybody who wants to come to Washington, D.C. on October 16th, we're having a free training day combined with Empowered GOA. And we're
Free airfare?
To rally. No, free airfare on GOA.
No. They're not quite that generous. But
and a rally in front of the Supreme Court of the United States. So that's fun. Cool.
Absolutely. Kwong.
Okay, real quickly, I need to correct myself because Mr. Gibbs over there just say long and introduced 12 bills, and I've been telling people 11. So actually, I killed every one of our bills. So I need to correct myself to number 12 now, right? So, hey, listen, moving forward, one of the reasons why I support young children to shoot, right, is because one day one of them will replace me or my successor. So ASRPA is a little on the spoil side because we actually have a legislator there representing ASRPA and the Republican, a member of the Republican caucus as well. So when I'm looking around, I'm always looking for the younger, not you, Frank. You and I are about the same. That's right. That's right. So I'm always looking for the young legislators. You know, we got a bunch of them that are in their late 20s and 30s and so on. But my way of passing the torches might be just a little bit different than most people. You know, you want to mentor people, but you're looking at a legislator. They're elected official. They're full-grown adults. I shouldn't have to go to a legislator and said, hey, come on with me, I'll teach you the Second Amendment, and one day you can replace me at the legislature, because ASRPA needs to have a member in the legislature, right? So that being said, I'm waiting for some of these young people to also approach me and said, hey, Kwong, you're president of ASRPA. How can I become a member? How can I move forward to take your spot one day, right? But I'm not seeing that yet, and I'm not being discouraged here. But I'm saying, you guys are all full-grown adults. You got elected, man. Why am I having to kind of hold you by the hand and teach you about the Second Amendment or guns? Because in your platform, every one of you said, support the Second Amendment, support the Second Amendment. So I'm looking for that eagerness from them as well as me approaching them and said, this is what you can do. You can actually be a chairman and start killing bills. if you don't have a governor within the same party. So that's where I'm looking at. Let's get the young kids to start shooting, indoctrinate them, right? But at the same time, get the young legislators to buy into it as well. Oh, I got a question. Why am I?
Okay.
Is that on the agenda?
Well, we'll allow it
Go ahead.
because it is Amanda Sepulchre.
You know what? If you have a stream for fly fishing,
These are ours.
Yes, right. We vote no. We vote Kwong has to stay here. All right. And last but not least, Holly Sullivan from CCDL and this project she's been working on for a couple of years now.
Yeah, so I would say for our organization, as far as bringing new people in, it's definitely something that's been a key focus of mine in the last few years. One of the biggest things that I think I've learned, let them try things you've never done. Just like they come up with an idea and they want to do something that's new and different. Like, don't go, whoa, we don't do that. Try it. And to Chris's point, like, it's okay if they fail, just don't fail too far. But be open to new ideas and trying new things. And speaking about doing new things, one of the things that I have found to be just strikingly obvious is that we have a gap in the pro 2A community where organizations like this are not talking like this enough. And a couple years ago, I was asked to speak down in Richmond, Virginia, and like full disclosure, I just wanted to go to meet Philip. I wanted to go and talk to Philip Van Cleve, who, you know, I like our organization emulates so much of what he's doing. And I wanted to meet the man and just sit down and say, like, can we talk more? Because I want to better understand what happens in your state. And we're both on the East Coast. And that's kind of bloomed into a conversation that now, 2 weeks ago, I was up in Massachusetts, and they're having struggles that are similar to us, like dealing with things like municipal zoning issues. And we definitely have to fix this hole in the 2A community. And I would like to present a concept of a national network of state and local 2A organizations. So we know without question that anti-freedom groups host strategy calls. They welcome members of other groups to focus on their key initiatives. We know that because frequently members of different but similar anti-freedom organizations reiterate the same data and talking points, but they're unable to answer detailed inquiries about it. We know that they're being fed the information from top down. They are absolutely sharing resources and information, but we don't do that. And there's a number of reasons why we don't. We have different cultures, we have different needs, and that's okay. And I think there's room for both. But we are missing a valuable opportunity to learn and share. So Pro 2A groups share many of the same challenges, but we have historically not had wide-reaching exchanges of ideas throughout the year aside from annual gatherings, which is what we're doing right now. We come together at GRPC, which I think is the most valuable Pro 2A conference in existence. I think it's the greatest thing ever, and I yearn for it throughout the other 11 months of the year that I say, what else is happening out there? And we don't have a really good resource to know. So as a result, we miss opportunities to get ahead of new issues by learning from the successes and failures of groups who have already encountered it. But now, post-Bruin, anti-gun, anti-freedom legislators are watching and replicating aggressive anti-freedom policies now more than ever. They're watching to see what they can get away with in New York, what they can get away with in New Jersey, what they can get away from Connecticut and Massachusetts and California, and they're copying one another. So we are limiting our ability to respond quickly and successfully by not communicating with other states more frequently and in more depth.
Well, I want to say that's enough because she.
Look at that, yeah. Sure. We do need more of that. So some potential content sharing that groups can and should be talking about, obviously legislative issues, membership engagement in legislative session, fundraising efforts, membership growth, succession planning, obviously a huge one, technology, education, marketing strategies, managing media. There's so many things that we talked about here tonight, and that is just the tip of the iceberg of the things that we can be learning from other groups of what they're doing. And a few of the goals is to create a network, and I keep using this term network for a good reason, through which state and local 2A orgs can connect regularly via Zoom as well as in person regionally. We can share information on trending legislation and anti-2A tactics at all levels from federal to municipal. So again, talking about zoning ordinances and how are you dealing with that in your state, things like that. Establish a sharing platform for discussion and brainstorming without any expectation that any group is mandated to adopt or implement any directive. This must respect that each region and state have their own priorities, cultures, and will choose what fits their needs. So I'm talking about just truly information sharing, but not a top-down organization. And form a committee which truly is comprised of all of our varying groups, furthering an essential concept that we are a flat network of independent organizations, not seeking to be a controlling national organization. And I think when groups have tried this in the past, that you're an affiliate of this other group, it fails. I'd like to see just a network where representatives of each state 2A organization gets on the line together and says, here's what our topic is this month, here's what we're struggling with, here's what we learned from it, here's what we already saw here. So our group, the CCDL, we're willing to organize and provide an initial IT platform, such as Teams, to get communication started. But we're not looking to own this project long term, as we firmly believe that this network must be a cohesive effort of multiple collaborative organizations if it's to succeed. It can't be that one group owns it. Ideally, the committee would become comprised of various orgs that will make future decisions on how it will operate as it develops further. But we need other groups to get involved. So we'd love to just put it out there that we will, if you email myself or Frank, the vice president, we will put this together to get it launched, but it's meant to sail on its own. It's meant to breathe its own life and truly be just a network of shared information where we can talk about all of these things, but it truly in more of a workshop format where we can learn from one another and say, here's what we did with this mailer, here's where it worked, here's where it didn't work. And we're in touch with each other more often because the other side is doing it top down and they're doing it dang well. We're too proud. We're too proud to ever do top down, nor should we, because we all have our own cultures. But we're missing opportunities to learn from one another. And we'd like to try to fix that.
Fantastic. I love it. Well, thank you so much for putting that together. I hope that we see something develop out of that. I think that would be really the cherry on top for me, that this time together, moved forward and developed something like that, because I think more communication, tighter networks is really how we move the ball. We see the other side doing it, as you said. All right. On that note, I want to go ahead and wrap up and break, because I want everybody to have a chance to socialize and intermingle and get some selfies with each other. And if you did have questions, find the person that you most wanted to ask a question of and ask them, out here on the floor. But thank you again. Paul, I know it's so late there. Do you have any parting words for us before I let you go?
No, except that we'd be happy to cooperate in any collaborative effort, like you just described. And keep us all loop.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paul. Good night. Get some rest. And everybody buy that book. Say the name of the book again.
It is Rules for Anti-Radicals. So that's a play on Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, of course. A practical handbook for defeating leftism.
I love it.
Basically, it is the culmination of all the tactics we have learned in 3 decades of gun rights activism. How to go about passing legislation, the mistakes we've made, the lessons we've learned, and I think it's a good practical handbook for activists who want to actually make a difference.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Good night.